So this is a map of human migration starting from about 170,000 years ago. Just to get your bearings, there's Africa, that's South America, that's Australia. And something that you'll notice here is that humans pretty much started out as a small group in East Africa about 170,000 years ago. And pretty much every single person alive today is descended from that very, very small group of humans in East Africa. What that means is that pretty much 99% of our DNA is the same as any other person you'll see. And in fact, humans have among the lowest amount of genetic diversity of any mammal out there. There's this thing in evolutionary biology called the effective population size, which is essentially how many individuals in a species you'd need in order to replicate the genetic diversity of that species. And for humans, that number is only about 15,000, while our overall population is about 7 billion people. Now, as a point of comparison, there are some species of mice who have an effective population size of about 733,000, which is about 50 times as much as people. So, with that being said, I have a question for you all, which is how many of you know someone or have someone in your life who is just so exceptionally talented at something that it makes you feel like worthless? Pretty much everyone here. So we all have people in our lives that are just so much more talented than us. Now, why is that the case? How is it that there are people that are so much more talented than us when we're 99% identical to everyone? How can we unlock those talents in ourselves when we don't have those natural skills? And that's what my talk's about today. It's about something called the growth mindset, or why you don't need talent to be talented. Now, the growth mindset is part of a field of psychology pioneered by Carol Dweck in the early 2000s. It's relatively recent. And basically what it does is it splits people into two separate groups, people with a fixed mindset and people with a growth mindset. Now, people with a fixed mindset basically believe that skills and talents are static and unchanging, while people with a growth mindset view them as simply just things that you can unlock in yourself. So in this talk, in order to tell you how you don't need talent to be talented and why, I'm just going to be going through 5 different areas in whenever you're trying to tackle a new talent and the difference between the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. So the first is skills, how to view skills. People with a fixed mindset tend to see skills as static, as something you're born with, right? Like there are people who are able to just start playing piano at the age of 2 really, really well, right? And those people just have a natural talent. And people with a fixed mindset believe that that's it. If you don't have that talent, then you're out of luck, and you can't do that specific thing. However, people with a growth mindset are different. They see talents simply as commodities, as things you can buy with the currency being hard work and dedication, right? The kid that plays the piano really well, they play piano well, but I can play piano just as well if I practice. That's sort of what people with a growth mindset believe. The next is challenges, how to approach challenges. People with a fixed mindset tend to see challenges as something to avoid. And I'm pretty sure we've all done this, like not wanted to do something hard because we thought it would reveal our lack of ability to do something, right? Why should I do something that's really hard if it'll just show how bad I am? But the growth mindset, again, is different. People with a growth mindset tend to see challenges as something that should be embraced because there are opportunities to grow and expand. A personal example is I'm really bad at dancing. Like at school dances and stuff, I never ever dance, right? But that's a challenge. If I try and dance, maybe I can see what I'm doing wrong and go from there. And that's a bit of a silly example, but this can really be applied to anything. It's not just academics or music, but like anything in your life, this can be applied to that. The next is effort. How is effort approached? Well, people with a fixed mindset tend to believe that effort is just something that's useless, that you only do if you aren't good at something. An example that comes to mind is lots of times when there's a test in school, people ask, oh, did you study? I didn't really study. Because they feel like studying is only something you should do if you don't already know the subject matter. Which, while that may be an efficient use of your time, just putting in effort when you have to isn't the best way to go about building skills and talents, right? Because people with a growth mindset realize that there is no such thing as mastery. Even if you get completely good at calculus, there are still other areas of math to explore and learn about. And then these last two, feedback and setbacks, I think are among the 2 most important. First of all, how do you deal with feedback? Well, earlier I mentioned that people with a fixed mindset tend to see skills as static. And a result of that is they see skills as something that's a part of your identity. They see your intelligence or your ability to play music or anything else simply as a part of your identity, a part of who you are. Now what this means is when they are criticized or when they are given feedback, they take it personally. They see feedback as something that is an attack on themselves because these skills and their identities are so mixed up with each other. However, people with a growth mindset see it differently. They see feedback as an opportunity to take advantage of a situation, because there are people who already know how to do the thing they're trying to do, and they're taking the information from that. And then finally, setbacks. It's no matter if you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, everyone's afraid of failure. No one likes failing. The difference comes in how you handle that failure. So to the fixed mindset, failure is just something that is an indicator of you should stop doing this. They use it to discourage themselves, because if I can't do this, why should I continue? However, people with a growth mindset, again, are the opposite. They believe that that if you fail, that's a wake-up call. If you fail at something, you should use that failure to figure out what you did wrong and how you can fix it. The best example here is tests. In school, if you fail a test, should you just be like, oh, I'm never taking that subject ever again? Or should you believe, okay, how do I figure out what I did wrong and how do I work at it and fix it? In the end, there's a fixed mindset and the growth mindset. Now, Carol Dweck, the psychologist that did all this research, pretty much said that people can be split into either having a fixed mindset or having a growth mindset. And this is where I disagree with her. I don't think that any one person is either a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. I think we're all somewhere in between. Because, sure, some of us like to embrace challenges, but we still don't like putting in effort when we don't have to. However, the more we can push ourselves towards the growth mindset end of that spectrum, the more easy it'll be for us to hone new skills and talents. Also, people with a growth mindset tend to be more financially successful in life, tend to have, just be overall happier, tend to live longer, and tend to hold more leadership positions. So not only is it good for building specific skills and talents, but it's just good as an overall approach to life. So these are ways that you can hone the growth mindset in yourself. But that's not enough, because there's a problem in society, which is that we are all being raised with a fixed mindset, and society is pretty much socializing kids to have a fixed mindset. The first example of this is in schools. In school, it's every single student has to go through the same curriculum as everyone else, take the same tests at the same times. So another question to the students here: how many of you have been in a class where you've gone through a unit where you didn't really know what was going on, taken a test where you didn't really know what was going on, and then gone past it and never really figured out what was going on in the first place? Yeah, pretty much all the students in here are raising their hands to that. And that's because schools teach with a fixed mindset. You're expected to learn everything at the same rate as everyone else, and you're expected to be able to take the test at the same time as everyone else, and then there's really no time to go back and analyze how we've done wrong. And of course, we can't give every single student an individualized curriculum. That would be impossible. It would be inefficient, but it's still a problem in schools that needs to be fixed. However, there are ways that we can fix it just in how we're raising kids. So the first is praise often, but praise wisely. Now, what does this exactly mean? Well, first of all, I think it's very important to praise children when they do something well. If they get a good grade on a test, or they make a really cool piece of art, or something like that, it's really, really important to praise them, to show them that they've done a good job. However, if a kid comes back with an A on a test, the worst thing you can say to them is, "Good job, you're really smart." Because saying that connects their identity with being smart. It's not saying you did well on this test, it's saying you are smart. And an indicator of you being smart is the fact that you did well on that test. And that's a problem, because then that student's going to go through life, every time they do well on a test, they're going to think, oh yeah, this shows that I'm smart. But every single person ends up going to high school and having at least one test where they just don't do well. And at that point, their entire identity is shattered. Wait, I didn't do well on this test. That must mean I'm not smart. And that's a problem. So how should we praise kids to have them be raised with a growth mindset? I think instead of saying, you're really smart, say, that was a smart choice. Or say, good job studying for that test. Or something like that, something that doesn't connect the student's identity with this aspect of their personality or a certain skill. The second thing is this statement: you just have to believe. This is what we tell kids all the time, and I think it's wrong. Because telling a kid, you just have to believe, takes away the fact that you don't just have to believe, you have to put in dedication, effort, time, and energy to be able to do good at anything you want. Just believing is not good enough. And then, finally, don't say no, but say not yet. Because people often love to say, oh, I can't run, or I can't do calculus, or I can't play music. But instead of saying that, say, I can't run yet, but I'm training. Or say, I can't do calculus yet, but I'm trying to get better. Or say, I can't play the piano yet, but I'm practicing every day. So my message to you pretty much is find something that you want to do, that you want to get better at, that you want to put time and energy and effort into, that you'll be able to put time and energy and effort into, and go do it. Because in the end, there's only a 1% difference between you and someone who already does. Thank you.